How to 3D print like a pro. So, purpose of this video tutorial is to get you from a point where you are 50% likely to fail 3D printing down to about maybe only 15% likely to fail. Just know that 3D printing is a powerful technology, but it has its limitations. So let's look at the types of the things that you should be thinking of printing and should not be thinking of printing as you get ready. Our first category, easy things, are relatively contiguous solid objects that have a flat surface that can adhere to the bed. So all of the objects that I have pictured here are sort of like more like artifacts than architecture, but you can extend the geometric idea to things that you're working on. Objects that have one sort of continuous or solid volume, no overhanging or extended parts, and have a considerable amount of flat area to adhere to the bed are the most likely to succeed on the first try. Try to reconfigure things that you're printing to be more like these objects, and they're more likely to print successfully. Category number 2, difficult things. These are objects that can be printed successfully, but carry higher risks of failure because of the geometry or the choices you've made. First one, this little spiky urchin of an object, has no flat area that can adhere to the bed. And more than that, it has what we would call local minima, these pointy downward-facing sections. The way that the 3D printer works is that it builds up from the bottom, so it has to start with something substantial. If you're only giving it these tiny little points touching the bed and the support material to print with, it's going to have a hard time. Next, we have thin or shell-like objects, especially those that are exhibiting curvature in one or more directions. This can print with the aid of a good amount of support material, but again, the sort of minimal area of it, or the bottom of it, the bottom of its curvature, has minimal contact with the bed. It's going to have a hard time starting, and there's a chance of the extruding plastic failing. Our little bread loaf here is the same thing. There's no way that you can orient this that it has a good solid contact with the bottom surface. Your best choice with this might be to split it in half and print it as pieces that have a flat surface touching the bed. This is an object that we looked at in the previous list of things that was previously a good print until we oriented it differently. So it has a flat area that you could put on the bed, but it's oriented lower, perhaps to save a little bit of time, but it's going to have a harder time printing. Likewise, this object was in the previous list as well, but it was split in half. If we tried to print this as an entire object, it would have a harder time printing. And then finally in this category, I would just describe this as any sort of object that is large and flat. So if it takes up a considerable amount of the bed and also has sharp corners like this, it's going to have a hard time sticking to the bed. Anybody who's already 3D printed knows that things like to peel up from the bed when they're large and flat. The more mass and sort of the more surface area it has, the more difficult it's going to be.